appreciated, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do you still have some time, or do you have to leave us
I
straight
have
away?
20 more minutes,
20 more minutes.
so there might be some
otherwise,
questions being raised.
please.
I'm eager to.
Okay. Is there any concrete question?
After
currently on the
nazanin,
floor?
I
Okay.
prefer after
Okay.
nazanin because we might have still 10,
Yes.
15 minutes, so I prefer after nazanin if there's any question.
Very good. Very good. Well, then I pass the floor to Mrs. Ansari.
Thank you very much, Stella, and thank you, Sudwind, for inviting us and providing us with this opportunity to be able to talk about the human rights situation in Iran. My colleagues here talked about various religious minorities in Iran and the abuses they have been subjected to for the past 30 years. I'm here to speak about a Shia Ayatollah, a cleric from the Jafari sect. Not the sect, but it's the traditional sect of Iranian Islam that is being practiced by the majority of Iranians in Iran. For the past 28 years, let me just tell you about my paper, which is Kehan London. We have revealed and documented many untold stories and unheard perspectives both in Iran and about Iranians outside of Iran. And for all those interested in Iran, whether academics or policymakers, this is the history of Iran that should not be forgotten, and more you are hearing about it these days. One of the most prominent and important stories we have been following since 2006 has been that of Ayatollah Kazemeni Burujerdi. Indeed, he's an Ayatollah of he's a Shiite Ayatollah from the 12th Jafari sect, and he has spent more than 2012 consecutive days behind bars. Just like the members of the Baha'i community who are imprisoned, who are not allowed furlough, this man, cleric, has been denied furlough as well. Throughout, he has been subjected to the most cruel and inhumane physical and psychological treatments and tortures. His crimes in the eyes of the regime in Iran is what? He's a cleric after all. It is advocating separation of religion from state in Iran, peace in the Middle East, as well as calling for Iran to abide by all its international obligations. Indeed, highlighting his courage and stamina, as well as the principles and values he has continuously upheld, a group of internationally renowned and respected scholars and politicians have nominated Ayatollah Burujerdi to receive the 2012 Nobel Peace Prize. In his latest report released last week, March 7th, Mr. Shahid highlights the case of Ayatollah Burujerdi, who remains in prison for his political opinions. Mr. Shahid writes, recent reports allege that Mr. Burujerdi's health has continued to deteriorate and that he has insufficient access to medical treatment. In November 2011, his cellmates reportedly made an attempt on his life, an attack allegedly orchestrated by authorities. Reports maintain that Mr. Burujerdi remains in danger. The Special Rapporteur, Mr. Shahid, reiterates his call for urgent, adequate medical access for Mr. Burujerdi and for his immediate release. Within a day of the publication of this report, Mr. Burujerdi fell ill in jail. His followers maintain that his physical symptoms point to poisoning. They suspect that his food was poisoned by his two cellmates, who have since been given furlough. They're no longer in prison at the moment. Despite suffering from internal bleeding, he has not received medical attention. Indeed, reports that we received today from Iran state that the medical authorities of the prison are not allowing him to be attended to by a proper physician. Instead, despite internal bleeding, they're giving him aspirin. And they are saying that, wait until Saturday or Sunday until we can, send someone to treat you. But then, we are in the middle of Nowruz holidays. And once Nowruz begins, for 2 weeks, all offices stop working in Iran. Um, in in 2006, when they arrested Mr. Burujerdi, they also arrested his family, including his mother. And his supporters claim that his mother was also poisoned in the same manner, and she passed away within a few months of taking ill. Currently, Mr. Burujerdi's family are under constant surveillance by the regime in Iran. Their phone calls are monitored and their homes continuously filmed by the intelligence ministry and other security services. His supporters around Iran are subjected to continuous harassment and arrests. Their emails and telephone calls are monitored non-stop. Indeed, they continually receive threatening telephone calls from the intelligence ministry and are summoned and interrogated at the special court of clergy located in Zafaraniye. For the sake of their family's safety, they refrain from publicizing news of their treatment. A number of them have had no other choice but to seek refuge outside Iran. To date, not one responsible state official has issued any written report or statement explaining the legal case against Mr. Khazemeni Burujerdi and to justify his inhumane treatment. Inside Iran, audiences have been subjected to total news blackout regarding his situation. Ayatollah Khamenei, as supreme leader and head of the special court of clergy, has moral and judicial and constitutional duty to provide a written explanation or set him free, but nothing comes of this. Last August, Mr. Burujerdi wrote an open letter from Evin prison to the international human rights lawyers, and if I may take a few seconds of your time and end with his words. To the esteemed members of the community of international human rights lawyers, please accept the sincere greetings of this humble, secular-minded prisoner of conscience. As you are aware, prisoners of conscience in Iran are continuously prosecuted unfairly without access to due legal representation and away from the scrutiny of independent media. To make matters worse, official state news agencies and outlets subject them to character assassinations. Is it a wonder that they are swiftly indicted? These defenseless prisoners, and here he's talking about all the sects and all the religious minorities we have listened to. These defenseless prisoners are tortured physically and psychologically, at worst in solitary confinement, by state agents tasked with extracting false confessions. It is therefore no wonder that they fall prey to a variety of acute and chronic diseases, which irreparably damages their health and attacks their physical immunity. Once again, I appeal to the esteemed members of the international community and international human rights lawyers. Heed our predicament. Publicly disclose our deprivation from internationally recognized standards of human rights and disseminate the extent of our distress and torture. At a time when news of our fate is subjected to widespread blackout inside the country, we appeal to you, the independent and free international media, as well as the leading independent and free international judicial institutions, particularly the UN. Do not abandon us. We remain at your mercy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is open for any questions and the exchange of views. If there are any direct question on the religious minority issue in Kurdistan, maybe they're most welcome to ask them before Mrs. Sharafkandi has to leave us. Otherwise, the floor is open now for any questions or comments.
If I may ask a question because I think you raised you raised two important points. Number one, about the extent of Salafism and jihadism within the Kurdish region, which is very worrying indeed, because these are the two trends that are threatening the rest of the Middle East as well. And also about the Satanists. What age range are they? How many are they? All that. So these two points.
First of all, thank you very much for the question indeed. And then, uh, first of all, let me begin with the Satanists. So this is not something about young generation that they choose to belong to that. This is something in a specific tribe, Kurdish tribe, and they have been with this idea from a very, how can I say, I cannot give you the exact history, but they have always been there and this in this region, but they have not been able to talk about it in public, that they are followers of Satan and they are believers of Satan. And they got, how can I say, they got hurt when you say, Na'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. This is something that the Muslims say, and they got, how can I say, they got intimidated by this, hearing this from other neighbors, but they are not allowed to publicly say that they have believers of or followers of Satan. And we have atheists in Kurdistan actually, but there are no records about them that they are not believers of God, so they are not, how can I say, we see they are not believers in God, so there is no recognition, no place in Iran for them. And actually they cannot say it, they cannot admit it, so they either try to say lie about it, to for example, say we are Muslim or we are Zoroastrians, something like this. And when you talk about the extremists, believe it or not, when you have this combination of oppression, suppression regarding your identity, you are a Kurdish minority.